Hey Reddit, I never expected that a simple family gathering would turn into a public humiliation, but here I am, left to pick up the pieces, after what can only be described as a complete disaster. It all started with a message in the family group chat. My older sister Hannah, 30, announced that she wanted to host a family roast at our upcoming reunion. At first, I thought it was a joke. We had never done anything like this before, and Hannah wasn't exactly known for her light-hearted sense of humor. She had a habit of making sharp, cutting remarks, often at my expense. Still, everyone in the group chat seemed excited about the idea. My parents responded with enthusiastic emojis, and cousins chimed in with comments about how fun it sounded. I scrolled through the chat, feeling a pit form in my stomach. I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to end well for me. You see, Hannah has always been the golden child, outgoing, funny, and charismatic. She was adored by everyone in the family. Meanwhile, I've always been quieter, more reserved. That made me an easy target for her jokes, and over the years, her teasing had crossed the line more times than I could count. She called it humor. I called it cruelty. Later that night, I called my parents to voice my concerns. "This roast idea doesn't sit right with me," I said. "It feels like an excuse for Hannah to take more shots at me." My dad laughed. "Oh, come on, Adam. You need to learn to take a joke. It's all in good fun." I tried to explain how Hannah's jokes never felt like harmless fun to me, but my mom chimed in with her usual dismissiveness. "You're being too sensitive. This will be a great bonding experience for the family." Bonding? Sure, if bonding meant bonding over my humiliation. I hung up the phone, feeling defeated. My concerns were brushed off, as they always were. The family dynamic had never been in my favor. Hannah was the star, and I was the one they laughed at. The roast seemed like just another opportunity for history to repeat itself. The following days were tense. Hannah kept hyping up the event in the group chat, teasing that she had been preparing material for weeks. It was clear she was enjoying the anticipation. I could feel the anxiety building inside me, but I tried to push it down. Thankfully, my girlfriend Emily noticed something was off. We had been together for 3 years, and she knew me better than anyone. "What's going on?" she asked, gently prodding as we sat on the couch one evening. I sighed. "It's this family roast thing Hannah's planning. I'm worried she's going to humiliate me again." Emily's eyes narrowed. She had heard plenty of stories about Hannah's antics. "You don't have to go if you don't want to. Set your boundaries." She was right, of course. But I couldn't shake the feeling that backing out would only make things worse. If I don't show up, they'll just call me oversensitive and make fun of me even more. Emily placed her hand on mine. "You deserve better than this. Don't let them dictate how you feel about yourself." Her support meant the world to me, but I decided to try a different approach. I messaged Hannah privately and asked her to keep the jokes light. "Hey, can you keep it fun and not too personal? I'd really appreciate it," I wrote. Her response was swift and dismissive. "Relax, Adam. You're being way too sensitive. It's going to be hilarious." I knew better than to believe her, but what could I do? The event was set, and everyone was looking forward to it. Then, the official roast rules were posted in the group chat. One line stood out to me like a flashing neon sign. "Everyone's fair game, but we have a special guest of honor, Adam." I felt sick. This wasn't going to be a family bonding moment. It was going to be a public execution, with me as the star victim. Despite my growing dread, I tried once more to back out. "I don't think this is a good idea," I messaged the group. "I'm not comfortable with it." The backlash was immediate. My mom called me, sounding exasperated. "You're not backing out now. Everyone's looking forward to this. Don't ruin it for everyone." The guilt trip worked. I reluctantly agreed to go, even though everything in me screamed not to. As if things couldn't get worse, I found out that Hannah had invited people from our past, extended family members I hadn't seen in years, a few old high school friends, and even some of my former coworkers. People who had known me during some of the most awkward and difficult periods of my life. It felt like a nightmare. The thought of being roasted in front of people who barely knew me anymore made my skin crawl. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it wouldn't be that bad. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe Hannah would keep her promise to tone it down. Then my cousin Lauren called to give me a heads up. "Hey, I just thought you should know. Hannah's been gathering stories about you from everyone. She's been asking for embarrassing moments and putting together a whole script." My heart sank. It felt like a hit job, disguised as a joke. I confronted my parents again, pleading with them to see my side. "This isn't right. It feels like an attack," but they dismissed me once more. "You're being dramatic. It's just jokes." I realized I was alone in this. No one in my family seemed to understand how much this hurt. They were all too busy laughing along with Hannah. Despite my better judgment, I decided to go to the reunion, but I made a backup plan with Emily. If it gets ugly, we leave, I told her. No arguments. We're out. She nodded, squeezing my hand. I'm with you, no matter what. The night before the event, Hannah sent one final message in the group chat. Can't wait for tomorrow. Finally going to say what everyone's been thinking. That was the final nail in the coffin. Any hope I had left was gone. I knew I was walking into a trap. The day of the family reunion arrived, and I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I kept telling myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe Hannah would surprise me. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad as I thought. Emily and I got ready in silence, the tension between us thick. She didn't want me to go, but she respected my decision. As we drove to the venue, she reached over and squeezed my hand. We'll leave if it gets bad. Okay? Okay, I replied, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. The reunion was being held in a large rented hall, decorated with balloons and banners. It looked festive, almost like a wedding reception. People were already milling about, laughing and catching up. I recognized some faces immediately, aunts, uncles, cousins, and then there were the unexpected guests, old friends from high school, distant relatives I hadn't seen in years, and even a former co-worker I hadn't spoken to since I left my last job. Hannah really went all out, I muttered to Emily. She gave me a concerned look. Stick to the plan. If it gets ugly, we leave. We made our way through the crowd, exchanging polite hellos. My parents were busy playing hosts, chatting with everyone. My mom spotted me and waved me over. Adam, there you are. Isn't this great? She said, pulling me into a quick hug. Yeah, it's nice, I said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. Hannah's been planning this for weeks, my dad added. She's got some really funny stuff prepared. Funny stuff. Right. I glanced around the room, spotting Hannah holding court in the center of a group. She was in her element, laughing loudly and soaking up the attention. She caught my eye and gave me a mischievous grin. There's our guest of honor, she called out. Raising her glass, people turned to look at me, clapping and cheering. I forced a smile, but my palms were sweaty. Emily leaned in and whispered, breathe. After some mingling and small talk, my dad took the microphone to kick off the roast. All right, everyone, let's gather around. It's time for the main event. People shuffled to their seats, and the room fell quiet. Hannah took the mic, beaming. Thank you all for coming. I'm so excited to finally do this. Tonight, we're going to have some laughs, share some stories, and maybe even reveal a few secrets. But remember, it's all in good fun. The crowd chuckled, and I clenched my jaw. Here we go. Hannah started with light jokes about our parents. She teased my mom about her obsession with decorating for every holiday, and poked fun at my dad's love for cheesy dad jokes. Everyone laughed, including me. It wasn't so bad, yet, but then she turned to me. And now, let's talk about Adam, she said, flashing a wicked smile. Our guest of honor. The room quieted, all eyes on me. My heart pounded in my chest. Adam's always been the quiet one, the responsible one, but don't let that fool you. He's had his share of, let's say, interesting moments. She launched into a story about me getting lost at an amusement park as a kid. I remembered it vividly, how terrified I'd been, how embarrassed I felt when they found me crying. Hannah twisted the story into a joke about me being too scared to ask for help. People laughed, and I tried to smile along, but it felt like a punch to the gut. The stories kept coming. My first school dance, where I got rejected by a girl I liked. The time I tripped on stage during a school play. Each story is more humiliating than the last. Emily shifted uncomfortably beside me, squeezing my hand tighter with each joke. I glanced at my mom, hoping she'd step in, but she was laughing along with everyone else. Then came the final blow. And who could forget Adam's big business venture, Hannah said, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. He really thought he was going to be the next Steve Jobs. But, well, let's just say it didn't quite work out. The room erupted in laughter. They had no idea how hard that failure had hit me, how much money I'd lost, how long it had taken me to get back on my feet. I couldn't take it anymore. My throat tightened, and I felt tears threatening to well up. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I need a break, I muttered, my voice cracking. The laughter died down as I walked out, Emily following close behind. The air outside felt cold against my flushed face. Are you okay? Emily asked. Worry etched across her face. I shook my head. I knew it would be bad. but I didn't think it would be this bad. Just then, Hannah came outside. "What the hell, Adam? You're ruining the night." I turned to face her, my anger bubbling over. "You promised to keep it light." She rolled her eyes. "It's just a joke. You need to learn to take a joke." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "No, Hannah, it's not just jokes. It's bullying, and I'm done being your punchline." Her smirk faltered for a moment before she waved me off. "You're overreacting." I shook my head. "No, I'm not. I'm done." Without another word, I took Emily's hand and we walked to the car. The party continued behind us, but I felt like I'd finally reclaimed a piece of myself. Emily drove in silence for a while before speaking. "I'm proud of you." I didn't feel proud. I felt exhausted, but for the first time in a long time, I also felt free. The hall was filled with laughter as the roast began. For a brief moment, I convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, things wouldn't spiral out of control. Hannah started off light, making harmless jokes about our parents and younger cousins. The room buzzed with energy, and even I managed to chuckle at a few of her quips. But that fleeting sense of normalcy didn't last long. After a few rounds of playful teasing, Hannah shifted gears. Her eyes locked on me, and I could feel the weight of the room shift. She was waiting for this moment, savoring it. She started with a childhood story about me getting lost at an amusement park. At first, it seemed innocent enough. People laughed, and I forced a smile. But then she added details that turned the story into something humiliating. Adam was so scared he couldn't even ask for help. He just stood there crying until a staff member found him. The laughter grew louder. I glanced around the room, hoping to find someone who wasn't enjoying this at my expense. But everyone seemed to be in on the joke, even my parents. My mom, who I had hoped would step in, was laughing along. Hannah didn't stop there. She moved on to my teenage years, bringing up embarrassing moments I hadn't thought about in years. There was the time I tripped on stage during a school play, the time I accidentally texted a crush something mortifying, and the time I got rejected at a school dance. Each story was met with louder laughter, and each one felt like a punch to the gut. Emily shifted uncomfortably beside me. She knew this wasn't what we had expected. Her hand squeezed mine under the table, grounding me, but it did little to calm the storm brewing inside me. Then Hannah dropped the bombshell. "I've saved the best for last," she said, grinning from ear to ear. "Let's talk about Adam's big business venture." My heart sank. She wouldn't, but she did. For those who didn't know, I had once tried to start my own business. It was a tech startup that I poured my heart and soul into. I invested my savings, worked long nights, and sacrificed a lot to make it happen. But it failed. I lost money, my confidence took a hit, and it was one of the hardest periods of my life. Hannah twisted that painful chapter into a joke. "Remember when Adam thought he was going to be the next big tech mogul?" she said, laughing. "And now he's back at square one, living paycheck to paycheck." The room erupted in laughter. People were smirking, exchanging knowing glances, and shaking their heads like it was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. I felt my chest tighten, my throat closed up, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just the joke, it was the way everyone reacted, like my pain was a punchline. I had shared that story with Hannah in confidence, trusting her, and she weaponized it. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. The laughter died down as people noticed me moving. Emily followed suit, her eyes full of concern. "I need a break," I managed to say, my voice cracking. The room fell silent. The energy shifted, and I could feel the tension hanging in the air. I walked out, Emily close behind me. As soon as we stepped outside, the cool air hit my face, and I took a deep, shuddering breath. Emily placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted. "That wasn't just a roast. That was an attack." She nodded, her expression hardening. "We don't have to go back in." I leaned against the wall, trying to steady myself. "I need to talk to Hannah. She needs to know she crossed a line." Emily didn't argue. She stayed by my side as I gathered my thoughts, and then we headed back inside. The atmosphere in the hall had shifted. People were murmuring, glancing in my direction, but the laughter had stopped. I found Hannah by the bar, chatting with a group of cousins. When she saw me approaching, she smirked. "Adam, there he is. Didn't think you'd actually walk out." I kept my voice steady. "Can we talk privately?" She rolled her eyes but followed me to a quieter corner of the hall. Emily stayed nearby, watching closely. "You crossed a line," I said. "This wasn't a roast. It was a hit job. You humiliated me in front of everyone." Hannah scoffed. Oh, come on. It was all in good fun. You're overreacting. No, I said firmly. It wasn't fun for me. You used personal stories, things I told you in confidence, to make me look like a fool. She shrugged. Maybe you shouldn't take yourself so seriously. I clenched my fists. You don't get to decide how I feel. This was mean-spirited, and you knew it. Hannah's smirk faded. Look, if you can't handle a few jokes, that's not my problem. It is your problem when you deliberately hurt someone, I shot back. I've put up with this my whole life. You've always made me the butt of your jokes, and I'm done. Hannah rolled her eyes again. You're being dramatic. I took a deep breath, keeping my composure. This isn't about being dramatic. It's about respect. And clearly you don't have any for me. Without waiting for her response, I turned and walked away. Emily caught up to me, slipping her hand into mine. You did the right thing, she whispered. As we left the hall, I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time, I stood up for myself, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. The fallout was coming. After the roast, I thought things might settle down, but I was wrong. The fallout was bigger than I expected, and the silence didn't last long. At first, I avoided checking social media. I knew Hannah's post would be there, mocking me, and I didn't want to see it. But Emily couldn't resist checking, and what she found was worse than I imagined. She posted a clip of you walking out, Emily said quietly. The caption says, "Guess who couldn't handle a little family fun?" I clenched my jaw. Of course she did. The post was gaining traction. Friends, family, even people I hadn't seen in years were commenting, laughing along, as if this was some kind of reality TV drama. I felt sick to my stomach. What do we do? Emily asked. Nothing, I said. I'm done engaging. She can have her audience. I'm not playing her game anymore. But it didn't stop there. My phone started buzzing with messages from family members. Some were angry, saying I'd ruined the night. Others were passive-aggressive, acting like I'd overreacted. The worst ones came from my mom. She called me 3 times in a row before leaving a voicemail. Adam, I don't know what's gotten into you. You're tearing this family apart. You need to apologize to Hannah and make this right. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. There was nothing I could say to make them see my side. They had already chosen who to believe. A few days later, my dad reached out. His message was different, quieter, more introspective. Hey, son. I've been thinking about what happened. I know Hannah's jokes have always had an edge. I should have stepped in sooner. I'm sorry if I let you down. It was the first time he'd acknowledged any of it, but it felt hollow. Too little. Too late. I appreciate the sentiment, but it didn't change the fact that he'd laughed along when it mattered most. Then came a message from Hannah. It was a half-hearted apology, dripping with sarcasm. Sorry if my jokes hurt your feelings. Didn't realize you were so sensitive. I'll try not to be so funny next time. I didn't even bother responding. There was no point. Her apology wasn't sincere, and I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. Emily and I decided to take a weekend trip to clear our heads. We needed to get away from the constant buzzing of my phone, the messages, the notifications. We packed our bags and drove to a quiet cabin in the mountains. The fresh air was exactly what we needed. One night, as we sat by the fire, Emily turned to me. How do you feel about cutting contact with them for a while, just to give yourself space? I thought about it. The idea had crossed my mind before, but I always pushed it away. Cutting off family felt drastic, like admitting defeat. But after everything, I realized it wasn't about giving up. It was about protecting myself. I think you're right, I said. I need a break from all of them. When we got back, I made the decision. I left the family group chat, blocked Hannah on all social media, and set my phone to ignore calls from anyone who was causing me stress. The relief was immediate. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe again. But the peace didn't last long. My mom showed up at our apartment unannounced. When I opened the door, she looked frustrated and impatient. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the living room. Emily stood up from the couch, her expression protective. Is everything okay? My mom ignored her. Adam, you're making a huge mistake. The family is falling apart because of you. Everyone's upset. You need to fix this. I took a deep breath. Mom, I'm not discussing this with you. I've made my decision. Her eyes widened in disbelief. You're really choosing to walk away from your family? From your sister? I'm choosing to walk away from the toxic dynamics that have been hurting me for years. She stared at me for a long moment, her expression a mix of shock and anger. Then she turned to Emily. This is your doing, isn't it? You've poisoned him against us. Emily didn't flinch. Adam is his own person. He made his own choices. My mom scoffed, muttering under her breath as she grabbed her coat. You're making a huge mistake. One day you'll regret this. Goodbye, Mom, I said firmly, holding the door open. She left without another word, and I closed the door behind her, feeling an odd mix of sadness and relief. Emily wrapped her arms around me. I'm proud of you for standing your ground, I sighed, leaning into her embrace. It wasn't easy, no, but it was necessary. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally taking control of my life. The aftermath of that night was far worse than I had anticipated. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of notifications. Hannah had already posted a recap of the roast on social media, complete with photos and videos. Of course, the highlight was me walking out, accompanied by her snarky caption, "Guess who couldn't handle a little family fun?" The comments were pouring in. Friends, family, even acquaintances from high school were chiming in, laughing along with her. It was as if the roast had turned into some sort of viral spectacle. I scrolled through the comments, my stomach sinking with each one. Classic Adam, always so sensitive. Lighten up, man. It's just a joke. Family roasts are supposed to be fun. Some people can't take the heat. Emily found me sitting on the couch, phone in hand, my expression grim. Have you seen it? She asked gently. I nodded. Yeah, she made sure everyone did. Emily sat beside me, placing her hand on my knee. We knew she would pull something like this. You've done the right thing by walking away, but it didn't feel right. It felt like I had handed her the victory. She had spun the narrative to make me look like the bad guy, and no one seemed to care about my side of the story. The messages from family started rolling in too. Some were angry, accusing me of ruining the night and being overly dramatic. Others were passive-aggressive, suggesting that I should apologize to smooth things over. Then my mom called. I hesitated for a moment before answering. Adam, what were you thinking? She started, her tone already accusatory. You embarrassed us all. Everyone was having a great time until you stormed out. I wasn't going to sit there and let Hannah humiliate me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It wasn't a roast. It was a public execution. My mom sighed heavily. She didn't mean any harm. You're too sensitive. You always have been. There it was again. The same old narrative. I was the problem, not Hannah. I ended the call without saying goodbye. I couldn't keep having the same conversation over and over. Later that day, my dad sent a message. It was different from the others. Short, but meaningful. Hey, son. I'm sorry for not stepping in sooner. I see now that it went too far. It was the closest thing to an acknowledgement I'd ever received from him, but it still felt hollow. Where was that support when I needed it the most? And then, Hannah messaged me directly. Her tone was as condescending as ever. Sorry if my jokes hurt your feelings. Didn't realize you were so sensitive. I'll try not to be so funny next time. I didn't reply. I couldn't. There was no point. She would never see things from my perspective. Emily suggested we take a break from everything and everyone. Let's get away for a few days, she said. You need to clear your head. We packed a few bags and drove out to a cabin in the woods, far from the buzzing notifications and family drama. It was peaceful, quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, Emily turned to me. How do you feel about cutting contact for a while, just to give yourself some space? I considered her words carefully. Cutting off family felt extreme, like admitting defeat, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it wasn't about giving up. It was about protecting myself. I think you're right, I finally said. I need a break from all of them. When we got back home, I made the decision. I left the family group chat, blocked Hannah on all social media, and set my phone to ignore calls from anyone who brought negativity into my life. It felt drastic, but the relief was immediate. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking control of my own life. Walking out of that courtroom after the restraining order was granted felt surreal. The air was cool, crisp, and refreshing against my face, like I was finally breathing clean air for the first time in years. Lily had tried to play the victim in front of the judge, spinning a sob story about how I was overreacting and how she never meant to hurt me. But the judge didn't buy it. For once, someone outside of my family saw through her manipulations, and that validation meant more than I could express. Emily and I walked hand in hand to the car, both of us quiet. There was no need to say anything. The weight of the past few months was starting to lift, and for the first time, I felt hopeful about the future. Over the next few days, the silence from Lily was deafening. Her social media pages, once filled with posts and stories about me, had gone quiet. No more snide comments, no more vague jabs, and no more public rants. It was eerie, but also a relief. Rachel reached out again a week later with an update. Apparently, Lily had been avoiding family gatherings and was starting to spiral. She'd resigned from her job and was keeping a low profile. I didn't feel joy at hearing that, but I also didn't feel guilty. Her actions had consequences, and for once, she was facing them. One afternoon, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was handwritten, and as soon as I saw the familiar loops of Lily's handwriting, my stomach twisted. I debated whether to open it or toss it in the trash, but curiosity won out. The letter was surprisingly genuine. Lily admitted to feeling jealous of me for years, jealous of my independence, my resilience, and the fact that I had built a life outside of the family's toxicity. She acknowledged that she had taken things too far, especially at the roast, and said she was sorry. But even as I read her words, something inside me felt hollow. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. It wasn't that I didn't believe her apology. It was that it didn't change anything. The damage had been done. The years of pain and humiliation couldn't be undone by a few pages of remorse, and I wasn't interested in reopening that door. Emily found me sitting at the kitchen table, the letter still in my hands. She didn't need to ask what it was about. "What are you going to do?" she asked softly. I shook my head. "Nothing. I think it's best to leave things as they are." She nodded in understanding. Sometimes not responding is the best response. The next day, my mom reached out again. This time, it was a long, emotional message pleading for me to attend the next family reunion. She wrote about how the family needed healing and how unity was more important than ever. But reading between the lines, I saw the same pattern. It wasn't about healing. It was about making sure Lily felt okay. I replied with a simple message. "I won't be attending. I wish you well." Then I blocked her number. There was nothing left to say. Emily and I finalized our plans to move to a new city. Packing up our apartment felt like shedding an old skin, leaving behind the constant stress and drama. It was time for a fresh start, and we were both ready. We found a cozy place in a quiet neighborhood and settled in quickly. For the first time in a long time, life felt peaceful. I threw myself into work, rediscovered old hobbies, and even made new friends. The weight I'd been carrying for years was gone, replaced by a sense of freedom I hadn't known was possible. Emily noticed the change in me immediately. "You're lighter," she said one evening as we cooked dinner together. "Happier." "I feel it too," I admitted. "It's like I finally let go of something that was holding me back." One night, after a few glasses of wine and a long conversation, I decided to share my story on Reddit. I wrote about the roast, the fallout, the restraining order, everything. I didn't hold back, and I was honest about the pain and the difficult journey of cutting ties with toxic family members. The post went viral. Thousands of people commented, sharing their own stories of family drama and toxic dynamics. For the first time, I felt truly seen. I wasn't alone in my experiences. There were so many others out there who had been through similar things, and the sense of solidarity was overwhelming. A few weeks later, Rachel reached out again. She told me that Lily had quietly left her job and was no longer the center of attention in the family. Without her social media antics, the family's loyalty to her had started to waver. People were finally seeing her for who she really was. Not long after that, I received a short, unexpected message from my dad. It wasn't a grand gesture or a heartfelt apology. It was simple and to the point. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I failed you." It was the closest thing to an olive branch I'd ever received from him, but I didn't respond. I had moved on, and reopening that door wasn't something I wanted or needed. Emily and I decided to create our own family traditions, completely separate from the chaos of my past. We booked a weekend getaway in the mountains to celebrate our fresh start. We spent the weekend hiking, talking, and just enjoying each other's company. It was the most peace I'd felt in years. When we returned, I met up with Rachel for coffee. We sat for hours, reflecting on everything that had happened. She had been my biggest ally through it all, and I realized how grateful I was to have her in my life. "I'm proud of you," she said as we hugged goodbye. "You chose yourself. That's never easy." As I drove home, I felt a deep sense of closure. The past would always be there, but it no longer defined me. I had built something new, something healthier, and I was determined to keep moving forward. Back home, I deleted the old family group chat. I blocked any lingering contacts that might try to drag me back into the drama. It was time to focus entirely on the future. For the first time in my life, I wasn't haunted by my family's expectations. I was free, and that freedom, it was worth everything. I ended my Reddit post with a simple message. To anyone going through similar toxic family dynamics, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to choose your own happiness. It's hard, but it's worth it. You deserve peace. Emily and I raised a toast that night, to new beginnings, to peace, and to the future we were building together. Here's to starting a new chapter, one that I am finally writing for myself.